Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well. It's a great day today. Let's read a legal disclaimer. Today's demonstration is designed to instruct you on using MetaStock and the accompanying software plugins. It's not a recommendation to buy or sell, but rather guidelines to interpreting and using specific indicators and features within the software. The information, software, and techniques presented today should only be used by investors who are aware of the risk inherent in trading. MetaStock shall have no liability for any investment decisions based on the use of the software, any trading strategies, or any information provided in connection with the company. So we'll go ahead and get through that. If you have questions as we go through the class today, please feel free to ask them. I'll be monitoring both the YouTube and the GoToWebinar, and we'll make sure you guys get an answer. I want to welcome you to the class today. Today we have a special guest, Kevin Nelson. Kevin is the only person who ever hired me for a job at MetaStock. So back in the day, 20-something years ago, he hired me for a job, and he was my boss for a decade or so. He knows MetaStock inside and out. He works at a company called LearnMetaStock.com, and he does a really, really good job with these classes. Today he's going to be talking about trendline breakouts and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to basically get out of the way. Let's go ahead and bring you on here, Kevin. How you doing?
Good. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that.
All right. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and change the presenter to you.
Okay.
I'll make sure I can hear you, number one. I'll make sure we can see your screens too before I let you go. How you doing, Tommy? Welcome. All right, we can see the learnmetastock.com website.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks again, Jeff. I appreciate it.
No problem. It's all yours, man.
So as Jeff said, we're going to be doing a webinar today and called basically working with trend lines and how to identify breakouts using the trend lines. So as Jeff was saying, I used to work for MetaStock, and in fact, my history with MetaStock was I started working for him back in '93, and I worked for him up until 2008. And then in 2008, I left and started a training company called LearnMetaStock.com. And the only thing we do at LearnMetaStock.com is try to help you with your MetaStock program and help you get whatever it is that you want out of the MetaStock program itself. And we do that a number of different ways, but we do live classes. We have a lot of video training. We also have some personal training available for you as well. But I'll talk more about that at the end of today's presentation. So if you have any types of questions during today's presentation, make sure and let me know. Just send me a message in the chat window. I'll be more than happy to try to help you out there as we're going through this. So what I've got planned for you again is we're going to be talking about trend lines and how to identify the breakouts using trend lines. So my first step is I want to show you the different tools that we have available to you inside MetaStock, and then of course show you how to interpret and how to use them and so forth. And you've got a lot of different types of indicators to use. And then what we'll do is I'll show you how we can create some explorations and look for different breakouts based off of these trend lines, and even show you how you can test using these trend lines as well. So let me go ahead and jump over to the MetaStock program. And the first thing we're looking at right here is just a chart of Amgen. This is just a daily chart. And the first tool that we're going to take a look at is just a standard trend line tool, which is located over here on the left-hand side, this diagonal kind of line right here. So when you click on this, your pointer will turn into a pencil. And probably, as you already know, you just hold down your left mouse button and you just drag it from one spot in your chart to the next. The nice thing about that, really easy to use. And of course, you can draw as many different trend lines as you want. And trend lines are probably one of the most important technical indicators that you can use in technical analysis. Now, the question that I've received over the years is like, well, can I use these trend lines to help identify, for example, when the prices are breaking above them or below them, or can I set some type of way to scan on them? And the answer is, unfortunately, with this trend line tool that you literally just draw on your chart like that, there's not a lot that you can do. It's really just for visually seeing what the prices are doing there. That's the bad news. But the good news is that you do have some indicators available to you inside the program here that are actually going to help you do all of that. So what we're going to take a look at here tonight is what's called the linear regression trend line. And the linear regression trend line, there's actually a few different tools that basically go along with this. But one of the nice things about this linear regression trend line is, number one, it's automatically calculated. What you do is you just specify the range of data that you want to look at, and it'll automatically calculate the trend line there for you. And what's nice about that is once you identify that trend line, then you can take a look at the price action in relation to the trend line. And then we can also calculate the slope. This is another real commonly asked question that I get, and that is, a lot of people will like to draw a trend line, but then they want to know what the degree of the slope is, whether it's generally sloping up, sloping down, or maybe even what that percentage is. And I'll show you how we can go about that as well. And the best part about this is that we can reference this in other formulas, meaning that we can go in and we can create custom indicators. We can create an expert advisor, an exploration system test. Doesn't really make any difference. So let me walk you through on how to actually do this. So I'll jump back over here to the program. And what we're going to get here again is this linear regression tool. So there's a couple different ways you can load it on your chart. First of all, over here on the left-hand side here, you've got a little left and right arrow button, and you can cycle through the different tools that you have available here. And the tool that I'm looking for here is, I'm going to scroll through just a couple more times here, is this one right up here at the very top of the list. It's right here. It's called the linear regression. And go ahead and click on it. And then what you do, it's just like any other drawing tool, you literally just drag you hold down your left mouse button, you drag it from one part of your chart to the next. Now the difference is that with a trend line, for example, like if I were to grab a trend line, I might draw the trend line like this. I might draw it across the bottom of the price bars. The difference with the linear regression trend line is it calculates it from whatever data point, or what we call a data array, and it calculates that, what you specify, and then uses that for its calculation. So for example, let me just go ahead and delete these for just a second. So those are the manual ones that I drew, and this is the one that I just grabbed from over here on the left-hand side. Now, if you can't find it from over here, you can also go up here to the view. Let's see, I'm sorry, not the view, but actually the insert. And from here, you can grab the linear regression trend line from here as well. So either way, you can either grab from the left side or go to insert and then find the linear regression trend line tool there. All right. Now, this trend line tool, what's nice about this is that once you've actually drawn it on your chart, this is a dynamic tool, meaning that you can hold down your left mouse button and then you can drag it on your chart and it'll automatically recalculate based on where you're dragging it. And then what you can also do is you can change the length of it. So to figure out what length indicator this is, if I hover over the line itself, you'll see that this will pop up a little informational window. It'll give you the ending date. It'll tell you the value, the periods, and then the slope. So in this case, for example, you'll see that this is actually covering 54 periods. So if you want to change this, I could make this a shorter trend line like that. And then by doing that, what you'll see is that this trend line is going to be much more responsive as I'm dragging it over the data. Now, another thing that you can do is that you can, of course, then zoom in and zoom out on your charts. And one thing I want to kind of point out here as we're doing this, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a few times. All right, so we can get a good view here. And again, we can basically drag it back and forth. The hitch is that when you're working with this trend line tool, if you zoom in a little too far, what'll happen is you won't be able to select that indicator. So if you zoom in too far and you can't select it, what you want to do is you want to zoom out just a little bit. And at that point, when you hover over that indicator, you should get a little four-headed arrow. And when you get that four-headed arrow, then you'll be able to grab it again. So just take note of that if you're trying to drag it around in your chart and you can't grab it for some reason. Now, the first thing I want to do for this indicator here is I want to change the length of it. You'll see that currently it's using 20 periods for the calculation method. So I'm going to drag this back here a few bars. And what I want to do is I want to get it back to 14 periods. And I'll tell you why here in just a second. But this is now currently at 15 periods. So I'm going to go back one more bar. And now we should be at 14 periods. Okay. So now we've got a 14 period linear regression trend line. So that's a tough one to say. Now, the next thing I want to do is from our indicator quick list here, I'm going to scroll down through the different indicators right up here at the very top. And the one that I'm looking for here is, you'll see that there's two different linear regression types of indicators that you can plot on your chart. The first one we want to plot is called this one, the linear regression indicator. So I'm going to drag it directly on top of the price bars. And you'll see that when I go to the parameters here, you'll see the default is going to be 14. And also the price field that it's going to calculate off of is the closing price. And that's exactly what I want. So I'll go ahead and click on OK, and that'll plot this indicator here. Now, watch what happens here as I drag the trend line tool that I just plotted here on my chart. As I drag it around my chart, note this last ending point on the trend line, how it intersects the indicator here directly on our chart. So no matter where I drag this thing, what will happen is that ending point will always intersect the indicator. Now, this is an important point, and the reason being is because what this line is representing is the ending value of that linear regression trend line. Now, why that's important is because once I understand that this indicator, for example, represents that point, now I can say that, or I can go out and find what the closing price or the opening or the high or the low of the price bar is doing in relation to that trend line. So for example, anywhere that I see on this line here, like during this section right here, I know that all these closing prices are going to be below the ending point when I drag it over to this point. So for example, I'll drag it over here and I'll go right here in the middle, and you can see the closing price or the price bars are clearly below the end of that trend line. Okay. And then vice versa. For example, like this one right here, I know that that closing price is above that line. So again, if I drag that trend line over to that point, you'll see that again, it's clearly above the end point there on that linear regression trend line again. All right. So that's a good thing to understand first of all. Now, the next thing that'll help is to drag the second indicator here on our chart. So again, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to find the linear regression slope. So I'm going to drag that one into an upper inner window of our chart here. And same thing, I want to make sure and use the same time periods, which again, in this case is going to be 14. Make sure that it's being priced off the closing price of the security. Click on OK, and that'll plot our indicator. Now, what this kind of weird looking indicator is doing, it's telling us what the slope of this trend line is doing at any particular time. So what's interesting about this is that if this line is going up like this, I know that I'm becoming, the trend line itself is becoming more and more positive. And then when it hits a high point and then starts going down, I know the trend line is becoming more and more negative at that point. Okay. So now to identify whether the trend line is actually has a positive or a negative slope is when this trend line or this particular indicator is either above or below zero. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add a zero line to this indicator. So I'll go ahead and double click on it. I'll go to the horizontal lines here. And from here, I'll enter the value of 0. I'll click on the add and then click on OK. And now we have a 0 line here. Now, why this is important is because every time this indicator is above the value of 0, I know that my my trend line, I'll just say trend line, is actually sloping upward. Anytime that this indicator goes down below the value of 0, I know my trend line is actually facing downward or sloping downward. So let's take a look at, for example, like this point right here. Okay, so this is November 9th, 2020. So I'll go back to that point right here. All right. And you'll see that at that point here, with an ending date here of November 9th, you'll see the trend line is moving upward or sloping upward. And so if I drag it a little bit further and I drag it all the way with an ending point here, November 16th, you'll see that that's the steepest point right there of what the trend line is doing. So I'll go ahead and drag it forward like that. Let's see if that's November, that's the 11th. We'll keep going forward. There we go, right there. This is November 16th. So this is the steepest that the line has been during that period of time. And that coincides with the very top of that little peak right there. So then what happens is now when I drag it forward, just like one bar at a time, the slope of that indicator is now starting to go down. And as I move forward here, and I'll just move forward a little bit, you'll see it goes, it's losing its slope every time I move it forward just a little bit. And then when I get to this point right here, which is November 20th, and this next one, November 23rd, let's see, it goes from the 20th to 23rd. So again, a weekend. Oh, I guess that's Thanksgiving weekend would be my guess. But anyway, anyway. So anyway, it's from that point right there, it's going from a positive slope right there with an ending date on the 19th, and then one more, and I'll move it forward just one bar if I can. I'm just going to try to drag it right there. Now it has an ending date of the 20th, and from there, that's when it starts to go negative. And then if I go any further, for example, it just becomes more and more negative. So again, right here at this point right here, this is December 7th. We'll go ahead and drag that over here a little bit. You'll see that the slope of the indicator is negative. And then at that point, if I drag it again, like I say, if I'm doing it carefully, if I can actually do it there, it'll go again from a negative point, from a negative slope to a positive slope at that point. And right here at this point right there on, what is that date? That is November 7th. That's when it starts to become positive. And the other thing you can do here too is that if you put your cursor on that line, you'll look at the bottom of that little informational window. And it'll say, for example, in this case, that the slope is a positive 0.01. And if I drag it back just a little bit, you'll see at that point the slope was a negative 0.35. All right. So again, really important. So now I can tell by looking at this indicator whether I have a positive or a negative slope, and I can tell exactly when it's crossing those different points. So next thing I want to do here is I'm going to drag this indicator. Oops, if I can select it here. I'm going to go ahead and drag it all the way over here to the end. I'm going to go ahead and resize this window here a little bit. And the first thing I want to do is I am actually going to save this as a default template because I'm going to come back. I want to come back to this view a number of times. So to save a chart as a default template, I'm going to right click inside the window and I'm going to choose Save as Default Template. It'll ask if I want to replace my existing template. We'll say yep. I'll close down the chart. And then the next thing you have to do is that whenever you want to reset your default templates, you also have to delete the smart charts. And the way that you do that is by going up to File, Delete Smart Charts. It'll ask if you make sure that that's what you want to do. We'll say yes, click on OK. And now everything's been reset. So every time I open up a chart, they should all look the same with those linear regression indicators already put on my chart. Now, something that I created here is an exploration here for the members of the Learn MetaStock site. And once you go to the Learn MetaStock site and you become a member, you can download any of the formulas that we create. So everything that we create here will be located, for example, it'll start off with an LMS for Learn MetaStock. And this particular one is called the LMS Learn MetaStock Regression Exploration. So let me go ahead and open that up. And in this exploration here, you'll see that I've identified what all these different columns are. Underneath each one of these tabs here, we have to be pretty creative because we only have about 8 spaces to work with when naming these. So up here at the top, it'll tell you exactly what each one is. So for example, underneath column A, that's going to return back the day of the month. Now, the reason why I put a day of the month in my exploration is that it's really easy to do an exploration on data that you had used from a previous exploration, and it's not the data that you wanted. So what it is just kind of a real quick check to make sure that when you run the exploration, you're running it on data that you want to run it on. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a minute. So then underneath column B, this will identify whether the slope is positive. Column C will identify if it's negative. Column D and E will identify if the slope just became positive or just became negative, meaning that it's crossing that 0 line, either the upside or crossing to the downside for negative. And then F and G is going to identify if the closing price is above or below the trend line. And lastly, column H and I will identify if the closing price is crossing up above the trend line or crossing down below the trend line. So the best way to really kind of explain this is just to run it. So we'll click on OK, and we'll go ahead and select it. And then what I'm going to do is down here at the bottom here, I'm going to go ahead and select the database for it to run on. And for this example, I'm just going to choose the Dow Industrial 30 stocks. So I'll go ahead and make sure that those are selected. Over here on the right-hand side, I'll tell it to go back over the last 1,250 records. So for end-of-day data, that's approximately about 5 years of time. I'll tell it to use the current exchange date and time, and then I'll go ahead and start my exploration. Now, as you probably know, the first time that you run an exploration when you're starting up the program, the first one typically runs a little bit slower. Seems like it takes just a second here for it to wake up, but once it does, it usually goes through pretty quickly. So, all right. So here's the results of our first exploration. You can see all of our securities are listed over here alphabetically. We have 30 securities. Now, underneath the day column, you'll see that every security inside here has the number 20 in it. And that's exactly what I'm looking for, because I want to make sure that I'm running it on the correct date. And so this is my quick check just to make sure that I did that part correctly. The next two columns, the positive slope and negative slope, these are going to identify if the slope of that trend line is either moving up or if it's moving down. So let's go ahead and grab a couple. I'll go ahead and grab, for example, American Express. That's got a positive slope. And then on the negative side, let me go ahead and double click on it. That'll open up our chart. Let me try that again. Underneath the negative slope there, I'll select that. And then I'll double click on 3M, for example. Okay. So let's go ahead and move that out of our way. All right. So here's 3M, for example, and you can see that the trend line is clearly sloping downward here, right? So that's 3M. And then on the other side of the coin, this is American Express. And as you can see, the trend line is clearly sloping upward. Okay, so that's what those first two columns are going to return for us, either a positive or a negative slope there. The next two columns, the positive X and the negative X, these are going to identify if the slope is changing either to a positive point value or a negative point value. In other words, changing from a negative to a positive slope, or from a negative slope to a positive slope to a negative slope. I think I got that right. All right. But I'll click on the positive cross and you'll see that I don't have any securities that are currently meeting that right now. So let's see if we have any under the negative cross. So I'll double click on that. And I don't have any securities there. But again, this will identify, again, if that slope is just changing either way. Then the next two are the close being above the trend line or the close being below the trend line. So let's go ahead and grab a couple there. So we see that 3M and American Express, those two are the ones that we just looked at. So I'll grab like Amgen for our close being above the trend line. And then I'll sort on the close below the trend line. And we'll see the Caterpillar came up in that one. So I'll go ahead and select that. And then again, I'll move this window out of the way. All right. So Caterpillar, this is identifying that the closing price of the last bar here is below the trend line. That's all it's identifying. And then on the other side of the coin, this is Amgen. And this is telling me that the closing price is above that trend line. All right. So then the last two columns of data that I've got here, we'll go ahead and open that back up, is the closing price crossing above the trend line or the closing price crossing down below the trend line. So let's go ahead and run those two. Oh, well, actually, I could have gone back into the report, couldn't I? I could just right click. We'll go back into the report. There we go. And this first one, again, like I say, this is going to identify if that closing price is crossing up above the trend line. So that's Honeywell. We'll go ahead and grab that one. And then the closing price crossing down below the trend line. There we go. That's Intel. We'll go ahead and grab that one as well. All right. So let's take a closer look at these two. Okay. So here's Intel, first of all. All right. So Intel, what this is doing, in order to identify this one, what we have to do is we have to look at this price bar right here, yesterday's price bar, and we have to look at the value of this red line. The value of the red line, if I go ahead and zoom out here, let's go ahead and zoom out here a little bit. I'll show you what I mean here. Go ahead and drag that back just one bar if I can, and then I'm going to zoom back in here. Okay, so basically, I know this is a kind of a tight one, but this is saying that the closing price was just barely above that ending point on the trend line yesterday. And then what happened today is that Intel just closed down below that trend line. So in other words, it crossed down. So on the other side of the coin, let's go ahead and close that one down. Let's see if we get a little bit clearer example here. This one, yeah, this is a better example. You can see that the closing price yesterday was clearly below the trend line, and then today for Honeywell, it crossed up above the trend line. So that's what that particular one will identify there for you. So now once you understand how to interpret that, then what you can do is then you can create whatever type of combinations that you want. So let's say, for example, that we're looking for, the trend line to be moving down, but the price to cross up above the trend line, or vice versa. Maybe you're looking for the trend line to be trending upward and the price to cross down below it. So what you can do then, if you go back into it, let me jump back over to it again. We'll open up the Explorer here, open that back up. You can go to the filter tab here and you can grab any of the formulas underneath these different tabs, and you can put whatever type of combination you want underneath the filter. Now, again, we've got our explanations up here. So let's say for this example, let's say that I'm looking for the slope to be negative. So I'm looking for securities meeting the criteria underneath column C. So what I could do underneath the filter is I could say COL and the letter C, and this will identify all the securities that are coming back with that particular requirement. And then I'm looking for the closing price to cross up above the trend line, which would be column H. So that's going to be the formula underneath that column H. So what I could do to add that to my filter is I could say and column H. Okay. So in other words, again, this is going to identify or find securities where the trend line is negative and the last price bar crossed up above it. And that's, again, that criteria is going to be found underneath column H. So let's go ahead and run that one. We'll click on OK. And again, we'll keep the same database, keep everything the same. We'll just go ahead and start the exploration. And again, this one should run through pretty quickly as well. All right. And again, if you have any questions, make sure and let me know. Just send me a message in the chat window and I'll be more than happy to try to go through those here at the end. All right, so we've got actually 4 different securities now that met that criteria. We've got Honeywell, McDonald's, Visa, and Walt Disney. So let's go ahead and grab them all. I'll go ahead and select them all, and we'll open up those charts. Close down this dialog here, and let's see what we've got here. All right, so here's our first one, Walt Disney. So this one, as you can see, we clearly, over the last 14 days, we clearly had a downward trend. And what happened is today closed above that trend line. So this is exactly what we're looking for. We were looking for a negative trend with a positive cross to the upside. Now go ahead and close that one down. And here's another. This is another really good example. This is Visa. Same thing. We had a really strong negative trend here over the last 14 periods. And again, a pretty positive cross here on this last bar. And it looks, if you look at the volume as well, it looks like the volume is well above its average as well. So that's Visa. We'll go ahead and close that one down. And let's take a look at this one. This is McDonald's. And this one isn't quite as clear. I mean, it looks like we've got kind of a sideways channel or sideways trend here, but it is in a negative slope. And again, we can verify that. We can take a look at this indicator, and this will tell us exactly that the slope is a negative 0.11. And again, the price closed above it. And then the last one was Honeywell. And same thing, not a huge trend downward, but again, the last price did close above that, that negative trend line there, okay? Now, what's also nice about this too, about these formulas here is, of course you can create them from scratch, or again, if you're a member, you can download them directly from our website. But if you actually want to test any of these as well, you can grab them directly from this exploration. So let's take, for example, that I want to test a trading strategy based off of using some type of slope, formula, for example. So let's say, for example, that I want to buy if the slope goes from a negative slope to a positive slope. And when that happens, I want to buy it, and vice versa. I'll go ahead and exit out of that trade when it goes negative. So to do that, what I'd do is I would grab the formula, for example, underneath this slope positive cross right there. So this will identify when the linear regression slope goes above the value of 0. So what I'll do is I'll just make a copy of that formula. And now I'll jump over to the system tester here. Go ahead and grab that. And we'll create a new system test. So underneath the all system tests, I'll right click on it. I'll choose new system test, and then I'll give it a name. Now, if you've been through my webinars before, what I like to do is I like to use a wildcard at the beginning of the name, and I typically use an exclamation point and then the name of the system that I'm creating. That way, my systems all get stored at the top of the list. Otherwise, they get sorted alphabetically, and you can lose track of them pretty quickly. So I do an exclamation point, and then I'll give it a name. So I'm just going to call this linear regression explorer or test. All right. So my buy order, I'll go ahead and select my buy order here, and I'm just going to paste in that formula. And our formula is just going to, again, identify when the linear regression slope indicator, 14 period, crosses up above the value of 0. Then to identify when we're going to get out, I'll go to the sell order. I'll paste in that exact same formula, but the difference is this time is I want to identify when this indicator goes down below the value of 0. So to do that, I need to reverse these data arrays. I need to put the 0 in front of that formula, followed by a comma, and then again, the linear regression slope. Okay, so this formula here is going to identify when that indicator crosses down below the value of 0. So we'll go ahead and click on OK. And to run it, we'll select it over here on the left-hand side. And I'll choose the same database here, the Dow Industrial Stocks, all 30 stocks. We're going to test it going long. I'll go back over the last approximately about 5 years of time. And I'll choose daily data. And underneath the trade options here, let me show you how I've got this set up. But I'll go to the account tab here, and underneath the account tab, you'll see I've got a points only test selected. Now, what a points only test is going to do, it's just going to return back a raw number of points that were gained or lost. And it's not going to take into account any type of dollar figures or anything like that. But again, it's just going to tell me in general whether the system worked or didn't work. So next, I'll go to the broker tab. And the nice thing about choosing a points only test is that what that also does, it'll take out of the equation any type of interest rates or margin requirements. If you want to run a system test and you choose dollar amounts for your different calculations and so forth, you can use these in your system test. But in my personal opinion, running a system test and entering margin rate or margin requirements and interest rates and so forth, it can be pretty difficult to compare the results against each other. So I try to keep it as simple as possible and just use the points only. And then for my commissions, I got it set up at 0. And for the trade execution, you'll see that I've got all my trades to be traded at the opening price with a 1 period delay. So if I get a buy signal on Wednesday night, I'll get into the trade on Thursday at the opening. If I get an exit on Friday, I get out at the opening on Monday. All right, so that's what it's going to simulate for me. So we'll click on OK. And again, I'm going to choose all 30 stocks. We'll go ahead and click on our start system test, and we'll see what this comes up with. So, all right, see what we've got here. Okay. Yeah, and I'm just taking a quick note here, a quick look here at some of the questions. So again, yeah, if you've got questions, make sure and let me know. But yeah, it looks like there's some in there. All right. So let's go back into the results here of our system test, and we'll sort, for example, like on the net profit. So we ran this on 30 securities, and on those 30 securities, you'll see that we have 4 securities that didn't test profitably. That means 26 of them did. So you'll see that, for example, like Goldman Sachs here was the top one, and we'll go ahead and open that up. Let's take a closer look at this one here. So this one generated, for example, 126 points. The buy and hold was 143. We'll scroll down here a little bit, and you'll see there were 43 total trades, 18 winning trades, and 25 losing trades. Now, one of the questions that you might come up with right away, especially if you're newer to system testing, is like, well, how did this thing even make money if I had more losing trades and winning trades? And the answer is this number right here, our average profit to our average loss. And in my opinion, this is one of the most important things you can look at, is you want your average profit to be substantially larger than your average loss. And that way, you can be wrong more often than you're right and still make really good money with the trading strategy. So again, in my opinion, this is one of the most important things that you can look at. But that's just one thing. And again, there's a number of different things, and I can go on and on about it. But in this case, for example, the average profit was almost 16 points, and the average loss was about 6 points. So again, that's a real nice ratio. Another thing we can take a look at here is down here at the bottom that a lot of people kind of forget about, and this is this out of market timing. You'll see that we were out of the market 571 bars. Now, why is that important? Well, if I scroll back up here to the top, we only tested 1,250 bars. And if we were out of the market 570 bars, that means that we generated these 126 points, for example, in what, about 3/4 of the time. And the buy and hold, in order to generate the 143, we had to be invested the whole time, the whole 1,250 bars, in order to generate that number. So again, that's another thing that you can look at. Again, as I was stating before, one of the things that is really important to me anyway is looking at this average profit to average loss. So when you're looking at a system test result, that's what this column is over here on the right hand side. So for example, I'll go ahead and sort on that, and we'll sort from the highest to the lowest. And you'll see the one that has the highest number is Apple at 4.61. So 4.61, what that means is that for every point that I lost on a losing trade, I made over 4.5 points on a winning trade. So again, that's a really nice ratio. And as you can see here, Apple generated 91 points. It wasn't the highest producer, but the average winning trades were substantially higher than the average losing trades. So again, if you want to take a closer look at that, of course, just open it up, and you'll see that the buy and hold during that period of time was 104 points. If I scroll down here again, we can take a look, and you can see that we were out of the market 445 bars. And again, we came pretty close here to the buy and hold number. And you can also, of course, take a look at the equity curve and just see what kind of equity that this thing generated there as well. So a lot of different ways to go about it. So let's go ahead and close that down. But the nice thing about that is you can use these different formulas in whatever type of configuration that you want. So let's go, tell you what, let's do one other thing here. And I'm just going to go, let's open this back up here, and I'm going to select, let's go back to the chart here for just a second. And let's go ahead and open up Apple, for example. I'll go ahead and select Apple, and we'll open up our chart. All right. And one other, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different ways that you can use this. And one thing that I've kind of noticed here is on this linear regression slope here is you could also take a look, or maybe even create formulas based off of these highs and lows of this indicator. Because what this indicator is doing, it's telling you when the trend is actually changing. Now, what I use, of course, is just the default 14 periods, but you can adjust this to any length that you want. So again, there's just a lot that you could possibly do with this to help you with your possible trading there. So, all right. So with that being said, that's kind of what I have for you here. So let me tell you a little bit about my service if you haven't subscribed to Learn MetaStock before. But again, here at Learn MetaStock, what we do is we help you with your MetaStock program, in whatever shape, form that we can. Literally from just kind of getting started all the way up to advanced formula writing. So we do it a number of different ways. And the way that you want to go through our website is that if you go up here to the very top, once you sign in, if you click on this live classes, for example, this will give you the schedule for our live classes for the week. We do 3 live classes per week on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And this will give you an explanation of what they are. And then once you're a member, then you can just click on this join live class, and you can come in at any time there. And the next tab over is our video library. And this is an area where you'll probably spend a lot of time here. And in this video library, we have well over 100 different instructional videos inside of here. Anywhere from literally just getting started with technical analysis, again, all the way up to advanced formula writing. So let me just give you a quick view here of what we're looking at here. But if we scroll down here just a little bit, if you're new to MetaStock and you aren't familiar with technical analysis, I would highly recommend that you watch these first 2 here. if you've been trading for quite a while and no technical analysis inside and out, and you're new to MetaStock, then you probably just want to go straight to the getting started. And from here, you want to watch at least about the first 6 videos here. And once you've gone through those, then you can jump down here a little bit, and you can jump down to the different power tools that we have available, like the forecaster, the expert advisor, option scope, system testing, the explorer, and so forth. But that'll kind of take you down through the other power tools. Now, every time we do a live class, you'll find a recorded version of that exact same subject up on the website. So I know, again, people are subscribing to our service throughout the world, and sometimes the times don't match up. But again, you can access all the recordings at any time that you want. Now, below that, we've also got a number of different formula writing videos that you can go through that'll help you out. Got some videos there on the RMO. We've got a whole section here just on using stops. Stops, in my opinion, are extremely important. And the reason being is that anyone can get into a trade at any point, but where you get out of the trade is really going to identify or basically determine whether you're profitable or not profitable. So understanding how to get out of a trade, again, in my opinion, is extremely important. So we've got some help for you there. And then we've got a whole section here on the different indicators available here for you. But one of the most popular sections that we have here in the videos is this section here, which are called the trading strategies. And here what we do is we'll take a trading strategy that's published in either a book or magazine and so forth, and then I'll show you how to duplicate it exactly. And then what we'll also do is that when we create something like that and we create any type of formulas, we'll also give you the formulas that you can download directly into your program. So for example, if I click on this one here, this Darrell Guppy's multiple moving average, I'll go ahead and select watch now. You'll see to watch the video will pop up. And then over here on the right-hand side, if there are any formulas to download, you can then click on that and it'll download it directly into your MetaStock program. In addition to that, we also have a lot of different training available inside of these as well. So for example, we've got a lot of different quizzes already built into here. So if you want to take a look at, or let me go back here for just a second. I would kind of got off my track here, what I was trying to tell you here. But let's say, for example, that you want to learn about formula writing, for example. Of course, you can go through the video, but then when you click on the watch now, not only will you be able to follow along and see exactly what we're trying to show you, but there'll also be quizzes there to help reinforce exactly what we were trying to teach you there as well. So we have quizzes available on a lot of the different videos there to help you out. So let me go back here again for just a second. There we go. There we go. And then I'm going to scroll back down here a little bit. Sorry about that. And we also do a whole, we've got a number of different product reviews that we've done here as well that you can also go in and take a look at. And these, I think, can be pretty helpful, especially if you have questions about some of these different products. We might take their training from just a little bit different point of view there. And we've got a number of different products that we've reviewed over the years as well. So you can go through that. And in addition to that, if you're a real-time trader, we have over 15 different videos here just on Zenith to help you out. So that's what I've got here for you. I hope, again, like I say, that that's helpful for you. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to help you at this time. And Jeff, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Reminds me of the beginning. We don't have a lot of questions. There's a couple comments I want to read for you. Trey says, awesome presenter as well. Just gets right to the teaching. Minimize all the about me stuff. That's perfect. So we have that. Doc Ass says, it's always good to see MetaStock and, Jeff Gibby. And he also says he'd give your presentation an 11 out of 10. So that's good.
Oh, nice.
Paul is must be a Learn MetaStock subscriber. He says, hello, Jeff. This is a great learning platform. Kevin does a great job. Worth every penny. And that's all. We don't have any questions.
Oh, okay.
But I do want to give a special offer. We had worked out with you a special offer So I'm going to take back the camera real quick here, or the screen share. I'm going to show your picture again. This is back when you were in high school, right?
Exactly.
All right, let's go ahead and kind of move this over here. So learnmetastock.com is Kevin's website. I absolutely get really good feedback from it. It has 3 live classes every week. He shows you how you can kind of go in and do formula downloads and the classes, and hundreds of videos. He kind of walks you through all of that. If you're a new subscriber to Learn MetaStock, what we're going to do as an introductory offer is we're going to let you try it out for basically $99. The offer that we're going to do is it's $99 a month, but if you pay for a month, we're going to give you the 2nd and the 3rd month for free. Now, this is only available if you're a new subscriber, and it brings your per month cost for that first quarter of learning down to $33 a month. And, I always talk about how much I love MetaStock, how great of a tool MetaStock is, and it is a toolbox, so the better you can understand how to run these indicators, these systems, these expert advisors, the better you can learn how to use those tools. Well, just like any toolbox, if you want to build a house, you need to know how to use your tools as well. This is a great way to do that. So you can take advantage of that offer. You can give us a call at 800-882-3040. You can visit us at metastock.com /sales chat. And you can also go and sign up right now on our website at metastock.com /learn metastock 3-for-1. So that's, I think I saw one more comment come in. Vincenzo gave you a rating of 12. So there you go.
Very good. Thank you.
Looks like we're gonna cut out a little bit early today. I hope y'all had a great I'm not from down south, but Kevin's in Florida right now. Hope everyone had learned something today. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope we see you at the next one. And again, try this out. It's metastock.com /learn metastock 3-for-1. Thanks for coming. Kevin, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And everyone else, we will see you at the next one.